One of my pet peeves is that anytime an Izzet commander is revealed and it has anything to do at all with casting multiple spells, it immediately turns into a spellslinger this or a storm that. And yes, those are very powerful and established archetypes, so I can see why people always suggest it. It's very quick and it's very easy. Welcome to Element Hobbies, and in this video I'm going to make a Lilah Undefeated Slickshot deck that focuses on winning through commander damage instead of storm or spell-slinging effects. When you're as good as Lilah, you only need one big turn. Lilah Undefeated Slickshot is a 3/3 human rogue for 1 generic, 1 blue, and 1 red mana. It has Prowess, and whenever you cast a multicolored instant or sorcery spell from your hand, exile that spell instead of putting it into your graveyard as it resolves. If you do, it becomes plotted. For those who don't know, plot just means that you can cast it as a sorcery on a later turn without paying its mana cost from exile. So with Lilah, you'll cast a multicolored instant or sorcery spell from your hand. If it resolves, you do the effect and then exile it, and it can be cast again on a later turn at sorcery speed. Also note that Lilah only does that for spells cast from your hand, so nothing foretold, or suspended, or even like flashback if you went that way. None of those will get plotted by Lilah. But that doesn't mean we can't take advantage of foretell or suspend or stuff like that, but we'll get to that a bit later. Now look, storm builds and spellslinger builds are obviously very good, and I don't blame you if that's your first instinct when you see a card like this. But one thing that I like to do with new cards is really take my time with them. I like to sit and just kind of stare at the screen, then disregard my first few ideas for a deck. Because those are usually the first few ideas everyone has. And if you keep doing that, it leads to homogenization and boredom. But that's not to say it's bad. For instance, I'm in the very early stages of whipping up a Gisa the Hellraiser deck that's just a zombie skeleton deck. Because I don't have one, and Gisa seems like fun in that you have to interact with people to generate zombies instead of just normally dumping them on the board with a bunch of lords and whatnot. It's nothing super innovative, and that's okay. Now going back to staring at Lilah, my initial assumption is that people will build mostly around the second ability, which is probably the way to go if you're looking for high win rates. But my contrarian hipster brain immediately went to the Prowess ability. So in this deck we're going to use Plot alongside Suspend and some other tricks to get Lilah protected, unblockable, and swinging for lethal commander damage. In a wild twist, I'm going to start with Ramp, and it's fairly normal ramp, in Izzet Signet and Talisman of Creativity. The rest of the ramp is not so normal, and it's split into two groups, Spell Cost Reduction and Mana Dorks. Karfil Harbinger, Unblinking Observer, and Tolsh Tide Turner will all provide blue mana, while Orrich Stalactite, Kaza Royal Chaser, and Pelargir Survivor will provide other colors or a variable reduction. Goblin Electromancer and Thunderclap Drake are both creatures that will reduce your instants and sorceries by 1. Jace's Sanctum and Case of the Ransacked Lab are both enchantments that do basically the same thing for your purposes. They have some other benefits, but they're primarily here for the ramp. Rowan Scholar of Sparks and Will Scholar of Frost are a flip planeswalker that will reduce your instants and sorceries by 1 cost. The planeswalkers have different mana values and different abilities, so you have some flexibility on when and how you use these. Since the goal of the deck is to prowess up Lilah and have her swing for lethal commander damage, we run a few cards that will help her get through unblocked. Distortion Strike and Teleportal will both prevent people from blocking Lilah. While Distortion Strike won't get plotted with Lilah, it does have Rebound, meaning you can cast it on the turn before you plan on using your Alpha Strike, and it will rebound the turn that you need it, adding Prowess for no mana. Run for Your Life will allow for the chance of casting Lilah and swinging for lethal in the same turn, providing an extra layer of surprise for your Alpha Strikes. Demonic Ruckus can be plotted and will provide Lilah some menace and trample. Blocking is still possible against that, but it's really difficult, especially with all the interaction that I run, which we'll get to later. Sometimes Lilah won't be enough, so we run a few creatures with Prowess to provide other threats on your big turns. Sprite Dragon and Slickshot Show Off don't technically have Prowess, but they more or less do, and a lot of the times their abilities are better than Prowess in general. Stormchaser Mage, Heartfire Immolator, and Harmonic Prodigy are all 2 mana value Prowess creatures. Stormchaser Mage has haste, and it can add to the element of surprise on your alpha turns. Heartfire Immolator can be removal after its alpha, and Harmonic Prodigy will help out some of your other creatures that happen to be wizards. Note that with Harmonic Prodigy, Prowess on your wizards will essentially be double Prowess. Bloodwater Entity will help you set up your next turn, and Niblis of Frost will let you play a bit of control and clear out blockers on your alpha turns. Kenra Spellspear has Trampling and Prowess, and once transformed, it will have Ward and it will get double Prowess. Most of our interaction will be multicolored to help set up the big Lilah turns, and the interaction is pretty varied. Double Negative and Izzet Charm are counterspells, with Izzet Charm being able to counter something, get plotted, and cast proactively with a different mode later on. Double Negative is, well, sometimes you just need to counter a bunch of spells. Inside Out and Invent are primarily there for switching power and toughness, which I love to do in Commander. Takes a lot of skill to set these up for maximum effectiveness, and with the number of wipes that do so via negative toughness, this can actually save or kill a creature at a key moment. Fell Beast, Shriek, and Chaos Mutation are wild and wacky creature removal. You don't always have a ton of control on how these play out, but if you know me, I love me some RNG and spurring the table into action. Roll Reversal and Swerve are just more wacky commander effects that I love. Also shout out to new AEW champion Swerve Strickland. I too swerve when I drive. Raven Form and Mystic Reflection are the monocolor interaction, and they both have Foretell for 1, so can still contribute to a big spell count turn, but won't be used on Lilah's ability. Primary Command and Flame of Enor are more modal spells. Choose abilities on the first cast, and then choose a different one on the plot cast if you need. Mamma mia, that's a lot of utility. Slick Sequence and Electrolyze are cheap damage with some card draw attached. Master the Way, Prophetic Bolt, and Rouse Outburst all do a chunk of damage with some sculpting on top. They are pretty expensive, so try to plan out your turns where these get plotted before your big Alpha Strike turns. I finish up the interaction with Gandalf's Sanction, which can be a real big spell when played in the proper spot. Kind of like the modal cards, you can cast this for a little bit initially, and then much later for more damage after it's been plotted. Archmage Emeritus and Fibblethip Lost on the Range are creatures that can help out with sculpting. Be careful with Fibblethip as you plot cards directly, meaning you never get the initial value of the spell that you plot, you just add it to your big turns later on. Plan the Heist and Highway Robbery is solid sculpting that you can also plot up for your big turn. Mystical Tutor is classic blue sculpting, and Inspiring Refrain is repeatable sculpting, though you will have to time this for your big turns and have it come off suspend on the turn you plan to attack to have it maximized. Otherwise, it's fine to just draw 2 cards every 3 turns. Arcane Infusion and Expressive Iteration are going to be really valuable in setting up your big turns, as well as digging a bit deeper on your big turn in case you need more spells. Collected Conjuring will get you 3 spells cast in one shot, which can be helpful for setting up multiple big turns. Practical Research is probably a bit overcosted, but a draw 4, discard 1 on your big turn is nice. You could probably get by with something else here if you feel like it. Teach by Example and Galvanic Iteration are 2-mana copy spells which are pretty self-explanatory. Najal the Stormrunner will let you cast your sorceries at instant speed, as well as let you get a spell copy. Baral and Kari Zev won't necessarily get you a spell copy, but will get you a free spell if you start your turn with a, let's say, sizable mana value spell. This card doesn't really have its own section, it doesn't really copy anything, but I just lumped it in here with the copy stuff. Don't judge me. The wipes you have need to be cost effective because you'll want to clear the board and cast Lilah in the same turn, so that the next turn you have a better shot of getting an unimpeded attack with her. Ill-timed Explosion can be used early to stall for your big turn, then used off plot to clear the board for Lilah swings. Thing in the Ice is a good ticking time bomb that can accelerate to Awoken Horror. Note that plotted spells do count towards this, so you can often get a flip on Thing in the Ice for very little or no mana. Spectral Deluge is a powerful asymmetrical wipe that can be gotten at discount with Foretell, and it will clear the path for Lilah the turn you plan to swing. Devastation Tide is the last wipe slot, but you can really use anything here. Blasphemous Act is a popular choice, Evacuation would be good, feel free to choose whatever you prefer. Okay fine, spellslinging is probably the best way to play Lilah, so we're going to run a couple payoffs just in case. Gutter Snipe and Fiery Inscription will just make it easier for you to win. I also run Pink Horror. While it won't do table-wide player damage, it will let you pick off problematic creatures and planeswalkers and is pretty persistent. I use Pit Offerings for some graveyard hate, Blast Zone for another wipe, and Arcane Lighthouse since I run a lot of targeted removal. I then run Bane Veil, Glasspool Mimic, and Cabal's Fury, which are utility lands because spells that are also lands are the greatest utility in the game. Besides friendship, that is. I then run my standard 2-color land package of 18 non-basics that can provide Izzet mana. Run the best you got, this is just what I run. I finish up the deck with 6 islands and 5 mountains. Being completely honest, Lilah is probably best when focused on spell slinging, either through attrition stuff like Gutter Snipe or through a big storm win with like Grape Shot. But it's also been done 1,000 times before and can be pretty boring. So hopefully this deck built around one big turn gave you an idea of ways you can build Lilah without resorting to the easiest choice. If you enjoyed this video, you may like my other deck videos where I provide alternate ways to play popular commanders, like this video where I turn Lazav into Krakens. Or you can go for traditional power with this Muldrotha Garuda combo deck. Thank you for watching Element Hobbies, and I will see you around.